back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. As always, I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, back from his hiatus, Alex Lott. And we're talking about bounce back players because I think the NFL needed to go home. They were drunk, out of the bar way too late, and weird things happened. All these box scores, all these outcomes, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Josh Allen craziness. Alex, we got to talk about which one of these players are bouncing back going into Week 10, because I feel like everybody busted in Week 9.
Yeah, it was weird. You kind of got to fade the bad performances and figure out what's just like a one-time thing and see through that to know what the long-term picture looks like. I mean, if you have NFL Red Zone and you hung on till the end of the 7 hours, Scott Hansen even called out. He said this week on Red Zone, there's only been like in the low 40s in terms of touchdowns. Typically, you're seeing upper 50s, in the 60s for touchdowns. There was just not a lot of scoring going on, at least in those Sunday afternoon games. So this week was just a weird one. We saw a ton of upsets, and it's so important to buy the dip where it's necessary to buy the dip on guys that are going to bounce back, and then also know what might start a trend. So we don't want to overreact. We don't want to freak out with some of these performances. So today we're going to be looking through a lot of things that happened in Week 9 and talk about what does that mean for these players, for these teams as we head into Week 10 and beyond. Are there buy low opportunities? Are there sell high opportunities? Or maybe situations where you just need to sell someone while they still have any bit of value as we head towards these fantasy football playoffs?
On bye this week, we have the Chicago Bears, which thank God we don't have to answer any more fantasy questions in our Discord channel about the Bears, the Cincinnati Bengals. That one hurts a little bit, and then the Texans and the Giants. So 4 teams on bye, but one of the teams that perfectly exemplifies the Week 9 bust was the Dallas Cowboys.
Sheesh.
The 6-1 Dallas Cowboys coming into a game against the Broncos at home with Dak Prescott back, and they had 0 points until the fourth quarter. This pretty much felt like a mid-2000s Tony Romo Dallas Cowboys game where they get blown out and then it's just garbage time at the end. Dak saves his day down the stretch, ends up with 232 passing yards with 18.8 fantasy points. But going into the fourth quarter, I think he had like 2.5 fantasy points. He had thrown an interception back into the third quarter, and that played itself out with all the weapons. CeeDee Lamb busted, Amari Cooper busted, Dalton Schultz was the leader in yards, and Malik Turner, of all names, Malik Turner, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, led the team with 5 receptions. It was just a rough day all around. But Alex, does this make Zeke, maybe even Tony Pollard, maybe even some of the pass catchers buy low weapons, or people kind of know what they are and they're throwing this game out the window?
I think if anyone is overreacting to this Dallas game, you got to go send some offers out for some of these names. I mean, to me, this is a throw it out the window. Dak was rusty coming off of the injury. They got just anything that could have gone wrong in this game for the Cowboys went wrong. Yes, they looked bad. They missed on several 4th and shorts. They even had that blocked punt that got like tipped behind the line of scrimmage by one of the defenders. So somehow Denver retained possession on a blocked punt. It was just absolutely ridiculous, the kind of things that were happening to the Cowboys in this game. And one stat that really just shows why you have to throw this game out the window is the time of possession. Denver had the ball for over 41 minutes in this game. Dallas had it for only 18 minutes and 48 seconds. And a lot of that was in the garbage time when these names like Malik Turner are in and Dak is driving them down the field. So if you have Dak Prescott, you had a little bit of a miracle in Week 9. He somehow ended up as QB9 on the week, which is just ridiculous. He did it in like
that shows you
minutes.
How bad this week was, dude.
It shows you, one, how bad this week was, but two, it just shows you when I know it was garbage time, and the Denver defense probably wasn't even playing real schemes out there. They were just in that bend, don't break type a defense. But it just shows you how quickly this Dallas offense really can jump on you. So I think they're going to get it going here in Week 10 against Atlanta. I think this is the perfect kind of bounce back matchup. Should be a high volume game. The 53-point over under is fantastic. So if you have the chance to buy low on guys like Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, even Zeke or Dak himself, perfect opportunity to do so. And if you had these guys in your lineup, if they let you down in Week 9, myself, I had Amari Cooper in several leagues. Super disappointing. He got off to a pretty hot start, didn't do anything for the rest of the game, but I'm still rolling him out there in Week 10 with confidence. So I'm still in on the Cowboys.
Now, we saw Ezekiel Elliott suffer a knee contusion in that game. Sounds like he's going to be all good to go for Week 10 against Atlanta. Love that matchup. For both of the running backs, I am willing to plug in Pollard if I have some bye week or injury desperation on my roster, because I think this game could turn into a shootout. And then after that, we have Kansas City, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Washington football team twice, and the Giants. So great schedule down the stretch for the Cowboys. Do not overreact. And I really want all the fantasy pieces that are in this Cowboys-Falcons game. We saw that game shoot out in a big way last season. But another game that I think is going to be a shootout, Vegas has it as a 50-point over-under. It's the Green Bay Packers versus the Seattle Seahawks. I'm already seeing headlines creep out that Rodgers might miss another week with the COVID complication. We're not going to talk about it. We've already talked about the memes in our Discord channel. If you want to join that conversation with us, hit that link for free down below. We're in there all the time. Start sits, waivers, and of course, anti-vaxxer memes on Aaron Rodgers. But he's going to be back, hopefully. If he is, I'm firing him up, no hesitation. Regardless, you have to plug in Devontae Adams, but scary, scary things with Jordan Love under center. That seemed like one of the worst picks at the time, and that pick now looks even worse, where we're 2 years away from Jordan Love being picked, and he's still not coming to play, still not putting up numbers fantasy-wise or in general. But we do have Russell Wilson coming back. So hopefully this does. We missed the Mahomes-Rodgers shootout that was supposed to be in Week 9. Hopefully you get the Russell Wilson-Aaron Rodgers shootout in Week 10. But hopefully everybody's healthy. You're firing them up. And Aaron Jones, the whole offense just completely busted for Green Bay.
Yeah, this is kind of, in a way, a bounce back on both sides of the ball because of the lift expected at the quarterback position. At the time of this recording, yes, there is some murkiness, like you said, around Aaron Rodgers' availability this week, but we're hopeful from a football perspective that he is out there. And with Seattle, it does look like Russell Wilson will be back. So on both sides of the ball, you're getting huge lifts if Rodgers and Wilson are on the field. And in a perfect state, if you have these Packers pieces or these Seattle pieces, both sides are at full go, because if everyone is out there and healthy, we could get that shootout kind of game script between two teams like the Packers and Seattle. And if you have DK Metcalf, if you have Tyler Lockett, you have experienced a lot of ups and downs over the past several weeks. DK has been a little bit more consistent, but with Lockett, you've definitely been struggling. I know you're happier than anybody else that Russell is coming back. So expect that Seattle offense bounce back as a whole in Week 10. I'm super excited to see that team back out there with Russ under center. And yeah, you said it for the Packers. You're still starting Aaron Jones. You're still starting Devontae Adams no matter what. If Rodgers is back out there, it's obviously no questions asked. And if it's Jordan Love again, you still got to go for it. I think A.J. Dillon is a really interesting stash as well. If he, for some reason, is on your waiver wire, pick him up. If he's floating out there with another team and you can give them a piece that you don't really need and pick up A.J. Dillon maybe for a playoff run, if Aaron Jones was to miss time and just has some standalone value as well as an RB3 reflex, I think he's a great pickup as well. But yeah, in this matchup, assuming both quarterbacks are out there and playing in Week 10, I think we're going to see a better game. And I'm hoping this hits the over on that 50 points that you mentioned earlier.
I hope so too. And another shootout that we have to talk about, 51.5 point over-under from Vegas. It's this Minnesota Vikings versus LA Chargers game. We saw Mike Williams completely underperform in Week 9, and now that's back-to-back bad weeks from Mike Williams. Everyone got so excited earlier in the year after the boom weeks, ourselves included, but we knew this was in the range of outcomes. This really has been the boom-bust type of player that Mike Williams is. The way his production is going to deliver for you in fantasy is very similar to Mike Evans, very similar to Cortland Sutton. These are big play, down-the-field guys, and if they don't come down with a couple of those balls, they're not going to be able to put up those numbers. But you also add in the fact that this Chargers game in Week 9 was really, really weird. They were playing the Eagles, and the Eagles were just running the ball. The game was over in like 30 minutes, it felt like. There was barely any time for these players to even go out there and make plays. So I'm expecting bounce backs from Mike Williams. He's a guy that you have to plug in. People are freaking out a little bit, and they're saying, should I bench him for other names like, let's just say, Devonta Smith? The answer is no there. Mike Williams still needs to be a mid-range wide receiver 2, a guy that you lock in at the wide receiver or 2, or even, in a best-case scenario, your flex spot in your 12-team PPR redraft leagues.
Mike Williams, I will say, I'm a little bit more concerned about. And to your point, I think you do still start him in your lineups. I think he should still be that wide receiver 2 flex consideration, probably wide receiver 2. This guy, we know the upside that he has. He showed it in the first several weeks of the season. And I know the game scripts have been weird over the past several weeks, but what just concerns me is that, like, against Philadelphia, against New England, against Baltimore, only 5 targets in each of those games. And Mike Williams is that big play guy. Last week on one of those 5 targets, he had like a 50-yard catch that contributed to his 2 for 58 line. But he's not someone historically that's been hyper efficient with his targets where he's pulling down 4 of his 6 targets for receptions. So if he's only going to have 5 or 6 targets in a game, he's really going to need that touchdown or just multiple big plays and a ton of efficiency. He's going to have to catch like every single target that's thrown his way if the volume's not going to be there. And it looks to me like Keenan Allen really has reemerged as the number 1 target on this
As
team.
we said.
Justin Herbert Justin Herbert is locking in on Keenan Allen. Not to say Mike Williams can't still have his weeks, but I think it's twofold. I think it's Allen really getting up to speed and just finding himself a little bit, and Justin Herbert establishing that connection. And I think, too, in those first several weeks of the year, like Mike Williams was an absolute menace. So I do think teams are really game planning him out a little bit more than they would have previously. So I know there's a lot of different ways this offense can beat you, but I'm a little bit concerned about Mike Williams. And if you still have the opportunity to sell him off of that huge high he had earlier in the season, there's a lot of guys in that range I'd take. I'd take Robert Woods over Mike Williams. I'd take Mike Evans. I'd take Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin. I would take a lot of guys in that high-end wide receiver 2 tier over Mike Williams at this point. And one last thing I'll say about this game, you're starting Dalvin Cook every single week regardless, but I feel like Dalvin Cook can almost be considered a bounce back here. He's been disappointing this year. He's missed 2 games. He's a running back 27. He's only given you above 20 points one time, and he's given you single-digit points a couple times. So Dalvin Cook's been good, but not great where you drafted him to be. I think against the Chargers and what I just saw from them in week 9, just absolutely letting the Eagles run all over them, Dalvin Cook's going to have a absolutely massive game. So if you have the opportunity, one last shot to buy low on Dalvin Cook, I think this is the time to do it because he's going to pop off this week, and then you want to have him not only for this week but for your playoff run as well.
Yeah, the Chargers are number 2 against the wide receiver, 30th against the running back position. So the Chargers are not only a team that's putting up a lot of points because they do have a strong offense, their defense is having some trouble against the run. And to your point on the type of deals that you can be making involving Mike Williams, I saw someone on our Discord channel mention they were able to get Javonte Williams and T. Higgins for Mike Williams. Thought that was a perfect definition of the type of trade that you can make, especially if you're a running back needy team, you're trying to load up for the playoff run down the stretch. But Adam Thielen in this game, the reason I love Thielen, and people are fading him a little bit, but I feel like if you are fading him, you were just box score hunting because he only had 2 receptions for 6 yards and a touchdown, which, of course, Adam Thielen somehow scores double-digit touchdowns every single season, but he also did have 7 targets. So it was just another one of those days, another one of those week 9 box scores that you're looking at in an overtime shootout with the Ravens where the Vikings put up 31 points. Thielen only really gave you that touchdown, which thank God for that. He saved your fantasy day, but I think he's a guy you have to plug back in, especially against the Chargers. I know I just said they're number 2 against the wide receiver position, but he does have that boom upside, and it's kind of funny. These Chargers and Vikings teams are very similar where they have 2 primary receivers that take most of the volume and score the touchdowns through the air, a 3-down workhorse running back that gets a lot done through the air. Both their defenses are struggling a little bit. So love everybody in this game as well.
So Steph, before we move on to our next bounce back player for week 10, I just have to let the people know about the best platform in daily fantasy sports. It is FanDuel. We're talking about these bounce back players, and the good thing is with FanDuel, you can have all these guys on your roster if you want. You get to draft a new team every single week. All you have to do is put together an all-star lineup for a given week or for a given game and stay under the salary cap. For the full Sunday slate contest, you draft 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a defense. Pick whoever you want as long as you stay under that cap. And right now, in the link in the description, you will receive a 20% match on your deposit up to a $500 match. So what that means is if you deposit $25, you're going to get $5 for free, and that $5 can get you entrance into the Sunday Million contest where the winner takes home a 6-figure cash prize. So if you're on mobile, be sure to continue on the web when you're signing up. But you got to get involved with FanDuel if you haven't done so already, especially as we're getting closer to the playoffs and some of our fantasy leagues. You got to get exposure to more of these players as guys have really risen and broken out this season.
Now, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you just win a huge pot from one of the Thursday games.
Yeah, I actually won with college football, so a little out of our realm here on Double Move Sports, but had a nice first place prize in one of the tournaments over on FanDuel. And yeah, it was fantastic. Wasn't anything crazy, but several $100s came my way. So I'm going to be playing FanDuel on Thursday. I'm going to be playing on Sunday. Join our Discord as well. Drop your lineups in there. I'm interested to see what kind of teams you guys are putting together.
Oh, I'm always dropping the sneaky stacks for the week in that DFS channel. But a couple more games to talk about. Some guys who completely busted in week 9 that there are some questions about. And in shallow leagues, I'm getting a lot of questions in 10 and 12 team leagues about Darrell Henderson, and a guy that you and I were way ahead on over consensus after he started to have those early performances where he's 15, 17, 16 fantasy points, and we said go and buy him before that big game. We had Keenan Allen and Darrell Henderson on our buy low list. Hopefully you went out and bought those players, but you were disappointed this week if you plugged in Darrell Henderson, and you were probably disappointed this week if you plugged in any of the Rams, especially in a game that we thought was going to be high scoring against the Tennessee Titans, or at least we thought the Rams wouldn't struggle even if it wasn't high scoring with the Titans missing Derrick Henry. But Darrell Henderson, 8.8 PPR fantasy points, but now he goes into this game against San Francisco. He's a guy that I love to have a bounce back performance. It's a 49.5 point over under in that game, relatively high. San Francisco is 20th against the run. They're averaging 19.3 fantasy points to the running back position. And right now you're seeing Darrell Henderson with 16 carries, 3.4 targets per game. He missed time with an ankle injury against Tennessee, only played 60% of the snaps, and you even saw Sony Michel come in and get the receiving touchdown that Darrell Henderson typically gets in this offense. This is the third game all season where Darrell Henderson did not score a touchdown. So looking at a game where the Rams honestly got blown out, 28-16 final score. The offense struggled all day. They were playing from behind, which they haven't had to do much this year. You look at all those factors, and Darrell Henderson was still efficient with 5 yards per carry on 11 carries. He's still top 10 in red zone touches, routes run, and route participation. So assuming he's healthy, good to go, love Henderson this week. He's flirting with that low-end RB1 range.
Yeah, I'm still in on Henderson. We'll see how the ankle checks out. But yeah, assuming he is out there, assuming he is close to 100% and active, I'm still in on Henderson. If it wasn't for that injury, I mean, he left fairly early in that game. Yeah, Sony Michel did end up getting the receiving touchdown late. Like, if he plays the full game with his normal allotment of snaps, I do think he would have had a fine week. He wasn't going to blow the doors off, but he looked okay out there in the time that he got. So, yeah, I'm still in on Henderson. This was a weird throwaway game, in my opinion, for the Rams. And I think with that, we can go ahead and move on to Matt Stafford. Super disappointing in week 9. He did end up with 13 fantasy points, only threw for well, I guess only, but he threw for 294 yards. Not really an only there. Did pick up a lot of those yards in garbage time, but only the 1 touchdown with the 2 interceptions. Super strange game for the Rams. They just looked off. Stafford had a really bad interception in his own end zone that was Carson Wentz-esque from the week before, almost an identical play, very unlike Matthew Stafford to make a play like that. And then very next play, very next drive, he throws the pick 6. And I think that kind of put the Rams at a disadvantage for the rest of this game. Got to give Tennessee some props. Their defensive line was all over Stafford all game. That pass rush was super intense. But with Stafford, the volume was actually still great in this game. The game script allowed him to have 48 pass attempts. Still squeaked out a decent fantasy week. Probably not very satisfied with it, but he didn't absolutely crush you. So against San Francisco in week 10, who just got torched by the Arizona Cardinals without their best receiver, quarterback, or running back, I'm still in on Stafford, and I think he is still probably a top 3 candidate for MVP. Only guy I can really think of that's clearly ahead of him right now would be Tom Brady.
Now, the last player that's been underperforming, and for fantasy-wise, you're not even questioning whether he's a start. It's just discouraging. Bad week after bad week. Something is wrong with Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes right now is sitting as the QB9 in fantasy points per game. You would think at least he's going to be top 5, and he's barely top 10 right now, coming off that disgusting game against Green Bay. Their defense did step up, though. Only 13 points from the Chiefs, but then you look over at Mahomes, 166 yards, only 1 touchdown. Absolutely brutal numbers. I don't even want to say throw this game out because this is starting to turn into a little bit of a theme with Mahomes. 15 fantasy points in week 8, 8.7 in week 7. He's having a little down stretch, but this is something that you see whether it's Steph Curry, LeBron James. We've seen it with Tom Brady in the past. We've seen it with all the elite quarterbacks, Brett Favre. Not everybody can just be dominant 24/7, 365. You're going to have, every shooter has slumps, and we're just seeing Mahomes go through one of his slumps, and he's going to be back before you know it. Don't get cute and even think about sitting him unless you're literally sitting in an 8-team league and you have Lamar Jackson as another option. I think this is a great bounce-back game against Las Vegas in prime time for Mahomes and for the entire Chiefs offense. After that, they have a game against Dallas before their bye week. So I love the next 2 weeks for Mahomes. Don't get cute. But, Alex, do you believe in the bounce-back as much as I do?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I will say I'm not super confident that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback for the rest of the season. I can't sit here and say that. But he will have his weeks. He's given us a long enough sample size in Kansas City where we know he's going to have that game where he comes out and throws for 405 soon, and everyone's like, oh, Mahomes is back, and we wonder why we were even panicking. So I agree with you. Like, you're probably stuck with them right now, and I say stuck with them as if it's a bad thing, but you're not going to sit them. You're locking them into stardom. You probably can't get the trade value for him that you could have earlier in the season. But I will say, if you are in, a 12-team league or a 14-team league, and you have the opportunity to move Patrick Mahomes, if you need a running back, if you need an elite receiver, I don't mind that strategy. I mean, Steph, in our home league, you recently had a similar situation. You had Justin Herbert as your quarterback, who's actually playing great, and you said, hey, I need some depth. I need some help at other positions, and you moved Justin Herbert. You picked up a receiver that went straight into your starting lineup and has been super solid. I think it was Jalen Waddle. And you also got Ryan Tannehill, who has actually been okay in the last few weeks. So you were able to slightly downgrade at quarterback, and now you can still stream and play matchups, and you were able to get a piece you need. With Patrick Mahomes, if you have the opportunity to do something similar, if someone's buying into the name value, if someone has Tyreek or Kelsey and wants that stack, and you need a running back, you need a receiver, don't sell him for just anyone. But if you can get a top 16 running back or a top 16 wide receiver type of name for Patrick Mahomes, and you can stream quarterbacks, you can work with Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz and Derek Carr and find a way to get it done. I think that's a trade you should think about making if you can still pull it off.
Despite all that, Mahomes, number 1 in attempts, number 2 in pass plays per game, top 5 in red zone attempts, 2nd in deep ball attempts. All the metrics are there. Like, we can't even say, oh, these down performances is, you look at his numbers, he's not efficient. It's like he's still there. The volume's still there. He's still throwing the ball a ton. Top 5 in passing yards, 3rd in passing touchdowns. Just having a down stretch. So you just take those L's, move on. It's the volatility of fantasy. You got to love it. But we love you guys listening and watching, keeping the show rocking with us. If you like what we do here on the channel, a like and a sub on YouTube, greatly appreciated. Again, you can hit that Discord link for free down below. Join the conversation with me and Alex, always in there doing exclusive live streams. Join that party, ask your questions, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.